Viewers, we are here at the Bintumani Conference Center. I have with me someone who has a very sterling record, who was a prosecutor at the Special Court for Sierra Leone, and he also served as Chief of Prosecutor at the International Tribunal for Rwanda. He prosecuted Charles Taylor, and so he has a wealth of experience when it comes to international criminal justice. He is coming to Sierra Leone as one of the participants or guests for this legacy conference by the Special Court. Welcome to Sierra Leone.
Yes, good to be here. Okay. Wonderful to be back in Salome.
Tell us your purpose of being here.
Well, this is an important part of what's happened internationally for justice. I think the court in Sierra Leone had a powerful impact in this country, and that's one of the things we want to talk about. But I think it also has an important impact in this region in terms of the rule of law, in terms of accountability for crimes and corruption, other violations against the rights of the people. And it really has, I think, an important precedent for the whole world. And so every chance I get out in the world, particularly when I was ambassador for President Obama for 6 years for justice issues, I would talk about this experience as being a particularly good one and one that other countries should follow.
I mean, the post-Special Court of Sierra Leone has also seen many wars, be they in West Africa or the general African continent. So one wonders whether the precedent that the Special Court wanted to create, whether that precedent was set.
Well, it's a good question, but obviously there are situations where there should have been justice and there hasn't been, though sometimes it doesn't happen right away. We have obviously the country right next door, Liberia, which we famously at this court indicted and tried and convicted Charles Taylor, the president of Liberia, but not for anything he did in Liberia, but for what he was responsible for in Sierra Leone. And they're now finally, I think, looking seriously at establishing a special court for Liberia to deal not just with the war crimes of their conflict that stretched from 1979 to 2003, but also potentially massive corruption. And the fact that they hadn't done that, I think, is one of the reasons why there's still high levels of violence in the country and a perception of impunity. So I'm hopeful that they'll move ahead and follow the example of this court. Gambia is also another example which is moving very quickly now after its Truth Commission to establish potentially a special court, not in cooperation with the United Nations, which is what we did here, but with ECOWAS, of which, of course, Sierra Leone is a member. And we'll have representatives here from the Gambia, including victims and survivors from the Jammeh regime, and some of those that are involved in forming negotiating a court, such as Sal Tall, who's the former head of the Bar Association.
So what are some of the legacies do you think the Special Court left that are going to be discussed, are going to be unearthed during this two-day conference?
Well, I mean, the first is the kind of structural legacy that the court was a partnership between the country and the international community. And that's not. I mean, you mentioned that I've worked in the Rwanda Tribunal. Yeah. The Rwanda Tribunal was established by the UN Security Council, and it had a successful period of operation. Went after about 80 or so, 85 of the major perpetrators of the genocide, the murder of 800,000 Tutsis and the Hutus that were protecting them back in the 100 days of 1994. And that court employed people from more than 100 countries, but it employed relatively few Rwandans. It was entirely an international court with judges and lawyers and defense attorneys and staff from all over the world. By contrast, here in Sierra Leone, you had a mixed court with some of the judges Sierra Leonean, some of them international, myself, prosecutor. I saw to the election of a nomination of Joseph Kamara, Sierra Leone, the Minister of Justice, as my deputy. 60% of the employees of the court were Sierra Leonean. And unlike the Arusha Tribunal, Arusha was where it was headquartered in Tanzania, about 1,000 kilometers from Rwanda. We were doing it right here. Now, the exception to that was the Taylor case, because the regional leaders were afraid of trying that in the region, but all our other trials were here. So I think that kind of mix and partnership is an extremely important thing. And that makes it even, I think, stronger than the International Criminal Court, even though, of course, that court can deal with a whole variety of situations, including the 30 crimes that happen in the 33 countries in Africa that are parties to that court, but it's way off in The Hague, and its staff is there. It doesn't try any of the cases locally. It has to investigate, and so it's easy for perpetrators to say, oh, this is a foreign court, this is Europe judging Africa, etc., as opposed to the country itself being involved in this process.
Ambassador Rapp, international prosecutions of highly placed individuals have not stopped men from waging wars. If you look at the world presently, for example, what is going on in Russia, the war that is Israel and Palestine, even in Africa and many other countries, the question one asks, what has international criminal justice not done that has not deterred men from waging wars that many people believe are illegal wars?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, do keep in mind that when we have courts and we have justice systems, even good ones, we continue to have crime. Though, to a large extent, it's a matter of keeping that crime down and allowing people to live with some safety and security and with some confidence that if something happens, that there will be a justice system to respond to it. I do frankly think that we've had setbacks in the international justice sphere in the last decade or so. And I think at the time the Sierra Leone court was active, at the time that I was here, between 2007 and 2009, there was, I think, a fairly strong consensus for justice internationally. And so we did have leaders like Charles Taylor brought to trial. We had leaders like Slobodan Milosevic brought to trial at the Yugoslavia Tribunal. But in the last 10 or 12 years, particularly with Russia actively opposing sending the case of Syria, for instance, where more than 500,000 people have been killed and half the population has been displaced, and massive numbers of refugees have taken to boats to go into Europe. There hasn't been any justice at the international level because it's been blocked. It is not in the ICC, and Russia blocks any possibility of doing it in any other way. And so, and then obviously we have the invasion of Ukraine and the question there of whether the court will get cooperation from Russia. And obviously Putin has been able to get away with the support of the Syrian regime and other things, and so there's kind of the perception that they'll be able to get away with it. But I think what you really need is success stories. Success breeds success. On the other hand, impunity breeds impunity. And so this court and its success is something that needs to be replicated in places like Gambia and in Liberia, and I think it will help discourage future crimes.
I mean, we have a cocktail of individuals who took part in the Special Court for Sierra Leone from different backgrounds, from different countries, they're all converging in Sierra Leone. What messages are you going to send to other countries after the end of this conference? Well,
the message is that, if you've gone through a horrendous conflict like this country did, you've got the approach of trying to do it nationally. That wasn't so easy here because there was the Rome amnesty. But it often is very difficult because after a conflict, the justice system may be completely wrecked, and to some extent it may have been wrecked before the conflict, and that was one of the reasons the conflict happened. And so doing it all on your own is a very complicated thing to do, and you'll also get the perception that it's a matter of score settling. Who's ever in power will prosecute the other side.
Victor's justice.
Yeah, victor's justice. But when you have an international component, it's possible to do it in a more balanced way. As you recall here, controversially, to deal with the Hinga Norman and CDF case. But it was important because even the Truth Commission had found that there were massive violations by the CDF. Not as large as there were by the RUF or the FRC, but if you didn't do that, you'd have kind of been missing some of the victimization that was out there. And I think that clearly sent the message to people that you don't gain power, you don't hold power through violence. And though the country, I know, has enormous challenges, there have been elections that the country has gone through where the opposition has won and taken power, even on narrow majorities, without massive violence.